Title: The Hidden Heir. Chapter 1: The Stolen Royal Pendant. Section 1.1: The Theft. It was the year 1743, and London was a city filled with whispers of wealth and power. Lady Eleanor Montague, the young daughter of a nobleman, was hosting a grand ball at her family's estate. Among the lavish decorations, there was one item that everyone coveted: the royal pendant passed down through generations of the Montague family. But that night, in the midst of the revelry, the pendant disappeared. It was gone without a trace. Section 1.2: The Investigation begins. Lady Eleanor was devastated, knowing that without the pendant, her family's honour would be questioned. She called upon one of the most renowned detectives of the time, Benedict Turner, a man with a sharp mind and a reputation for solving even the most intricate cases. As Turner inspected the scene, he realised this wasn't just a robbery, it was a carefully orchestrated theft. There were no signs of forced entry, and the only people who could have had access to the pendant were the guests. Section 1.3: A Family Secret. Turner began his inquiries by questioning the guests, but they all seemed to have their own secrets. Among them was Sir William Ashton, a distant relative of the Montague family who had recently fallen on hard times. He was known to have a gambling problem, and Turner suspected he might be involved. But as Turner delved deeper into the family's past, he uncovered a shocking truth. Lady Eleanor's late father had hidden a secret heir to the Montague fortune, someone who had been erased from history. Section 1.4: The Hidden Heir. After weeks of searching, Turner found a clue that led him to a remote cottage on the outskirts of London. Inside, he discovered a young man named Thomas, who was in possession of the royal pendant. He claimed to be the secret heir, the son of Lady Eleanor's father from a past relationship. The theft, he explained, was not about greed. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim what was rightfully his. Chapter 2: Betrayal and Deception. Section 2.1: The Montague family's dark past. As Turner investigated further, he uncovered that the Montague family had been hiding the truth for years. Thomas, the hidden heir, was born during a time when the family was embroiled in a scandal. Lady Eleanor's father had kept his existence a secret to protect the family name. But the more Turner learned, the more he realised that Thomas wasn't just a victim, he was a player in a much larger game. His arrival in London was no accident. Section 2.2: A Dangerous Alliance. Thomas revealed that he had been in contact with a group of mercenaries who had been hired by a rival noble family. The rival family, the Devereux, had been seeking the Montague fortune for years, and Thomas had promised to help them take over the estate in exchange for his rightful inheritance. He had planned the theft of the pendant to create a distraction, while the Devereux made their move. Section 2.3: The Double Cross. But as Turner continued to piece the puzzle together, he discovered a shocking twist. Thomas had double-crossed the Devereux, intending to keep the Montague fortune for himself. He had stolen the pendant to prove his worth, planning to use it as leverage. Turner had to act quickly before Thomas could escape with both the fortune and the truth of his heritage. Section 2.4: The Final Showdown. In the dead of night, Turner tracked Thomas to a hidden warehouse near the Thames, where he was preparing to flee the city. As Turner confronted him, a fierce battle ensued between the two men. In the end, Turner was able to recover the pendant and bring Thomas to justice, but not before discovering that the Montague family's dark past had cast a long shadow over their legacy. The royal pendant was returned to Lady Eleanor, but the true cost of the family's secrets had left deep scars. Chapter 3: A New Beginning. Section 3.1: The Aftermath. Lady Eleanor, though relieved to have the pendant returned, was left to grapple with the reality of her family's hidden truths. The news of Thomas's existence spread throughout London, and the Montague name was forever tarnished. Eleanor decided that, rather than live in the shadow of her father's mistakes, she would forge a new path for herself and her family. Section 3.2: Rebuilding the Legacy. With Turner's help, Lady Eleanor set about rebuilding the Montague family's reputation. She used her inheritance to fund charitable works, establishing schools and hospitals throughout London. The royal pendant, once a symbol of power, was donated to the British Museum, where it was displayed as a reminder of the family's complicated history. Section 3.3: The Detective's Return. Benedict Turner, now a close confidant of Lady Eleanor, was honoured for his role in solving the case. But he knew that his work was far from over. London's criminal underworld was full of secrets, and Turner had only scratched the surface. As he walked away from the Montague estate, he was already preparing for his next case, knowing that the city's darkest mysteries were waiting for him. Section 3.4. A Future Unwritten. Lady Eleanor, having taken control of her family's future, looked out over the city from her estate. She knew the path ahead would not be easy, but it was hers to shape. As the sun set over London, she vowed to never let the shadows of the past define her, and to build a future worthy of the Montague name. Chapter 4. The Devereux Plot. Section 4.1. A New Threat. Months had passed since Thomas's capture, and Lady Eleanor had begun to find peace with the recovery of her family's legacy. But the Devereux family, still hungry for power, had not forgotten their failed attempt to seize the Montague fortune. Eleanor received a mysterious letter, warning her that the Devereux would stop at nothing to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. The letter was signed simply, The Devereux Return. Section 4.2. The Devereux family's history. The Devereux family had been rivals of the Montagues for generations, their animosity rooted in a bitter feud over land and wealth. While the Montagues had managed to maintain their prominence, the Devereux had steadily fallen from grace. Their patriarch, Lord Richard Devereux, had always believed that the Montague fortune belonged to his family by birthright. Now, with their influence growing again in London's political circles, the Devereux were positioning themselves for a final assault on the Montagues. Section 4.3. Gathering Allies. Eleanor knew she could not face the Devereux alone. She called upon her trusted advisor, Benedict Turner, and together they sought out allies within the city's elite. They approached influential figures who shared their desire to keep the Montague legacy intact, including prominent businessmen, other noble families, and even a few members of the Crown. But the Devereux had their own allies, including powerful mercenaries, who were willing to do anything to restore the Devereux family's lost fortune. Section 4.4. A Deadly Game. The battle for control of London's underworld began as Eleanor and Turner worked together to uncover the Devereux' plans. They discovered that Lord Richard Devereux was orchestrating a plot to frame Eleanor for crimes she didn't commit, hoping to discredit her and take over her inheritance. The game was on, and every move they made seemed to set off a chain reaction of betrayal, double crosses, and deadly consequences. Chapter 5. The Silent Assassin. Section 5.1. A Mysterious Figure. As the conflict between the Montagues and Devereux escalated, a new player emerged from the shadows, a highly skilled assassin, known only as the Ghost. His identity was unknown, but rumours swirled that he had been hired by Lord Richard Devereux to take out key figures within the Montague camp. His methods were precise, and his reputation for leaving no trace of his presence terrified even the most hardened criminals. Section 5.2. A Close Call. Turner was the first to realise that the Ghost was closing in on them. During a meeting with an ally, they were ambushed in an alleyway. Turner barely escaped with his life, but their contact was killed before they could gain crucial information. The assassin's style was unmistakable. He never left a weapon behind, and his kills were so clean that there was no evidence to trace. It was as if he vanished into thin air after completing his mission. Section 5.3. A Trail of Blood. Determined to find out who was behind the Ghost, Eleanor and Turner followed a trail of cryptic clues. Each clue led them to a different part of London: dark alleys, hidden taverns, and abandoned warehouses. With each step, they drew closer to uncovering the identity of the Ghost, but the deeper they ventured into the criminal underworld, the more dangerous their investigation became. Section 5.4. The Ghost Revealed. After weeks of following the assassin's trail, Turner made a shocking discovery. The Ghost was none other than one of the Devereux' most trusted men, Lord Richard's own nephew, Thomas Devereux, disguised and trained in the art of assassination. Thomas had become a deadly weapon in his family's quest for control. Now, it was up to Turner and Eleanor to stop him before he could strike again. Chapter 6. The Tides of War. Section 6.1. A Family Divided. As the Montague-Devereux conflict grew, a rift began to form within the Montague family itself. Some members, including Eleanor's cousin, Sir Edward Montague, believed that the family should negotiate with the Devereux to avoid Further bloodshed. They argued that preserving the Montague name was more important than continuing a senseless war. Section 6.2, the Devereux counterattack. In response to Eleanor's refusal to back down, the Devereux launched a full-scale counterattack. Lord Richard Devereux used his influence to sway members of Parliament, accusing Eleanor of being a criminal and plotting against the Crown. False evidence was planted, and Eleanor's name was tarnished in the public eye. Her every move was scrutinised, and soon, even her loyal allies began to doubt her motives. Section 6.3, Betrayal from within ***. Just as Eleanor's position seemed hopeless, a trusted ally within the Montague family, Sir Edward, betrayed her. He had been in secret communication with the Devereux, promising to turn over control of the family estate in exchange for a piece of the Montague fortune. With Sir Edward's betrayal, the Montague family's hold on their legacy grew weaker, and the Devereux seemed to be winning the war. Section 6.4, the turning point. Eleanor and Turner, now facing enemies both external and internal, knew that the only way to survive was to outsmart their adversaries. They began to rally their remaining supporters, using the information they had gathered over the years to expose the Devereux' illegal dealings. The final battle for control of London's power and wealth was about to begin, and Eleanor knew that she had no choice but to fight with everything she had left. Chapter 7, the final showdown. Section 7.1, the duel. The Montague estate, once a symbol of power and wealth, had become a battleground. Eleanor, Turner, and their loyal allies gathered in the estate's grand hall for what would be the final confrontation with the Devereux. Lord Richard and his mercenaries were determined to seize control once and for all. But Eleanor was ready. Section 7.2, the battle for London. The battle unfolded in the streets of London, with both families clashing in a desperate struggle for control. Turner and Eleanor fought side by side, taking on the Devereux mercenaries, while Sir Edward and his treacherous allies attempted to flee with the family fortune. Section 7.3, the final betrayal. In a shocking twist, Sir Edward betrayed his family once more, leading the Devereux straight to the heart of the Montague estate. With the final blow struck, it seemed as though all was lost. Section 7.4, victory at last. In the end, Eleanor emerged victorious. With Turner's help, they defeated the Devereux, and Sir Edward was brought to justice for his betrayal. The Montague family's legacy was restored, and Eleanor reclaimed control of her inheritance. Chapter 8, the Ghost Legacy. Section 8.1, Aftermath of the War. The dust had settled after the final showdown, but the scars of the conflict still remained. Eleanor, now the undisputed head of the Montague family, tried to rebuild what had been destroyed, but the legacy of the Devereux and their violent campaign had left a lasting impact on the family, the city, and the people who had been involved. As the city returned to its routines, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something darker still lingered. Section 8.2, the unfinished business. Despite their victory, Eleanor was haunted by the loss of several allies, including her close friend Benedict Turner. He had been gravely injured during the final battle, and though he had survived, he was no longer the man he once was. His mind, once sharp and strategic, was now clouded with the memories of the war. Eleanor felt a deep sense of guilt for not being able to protect him more, and her thoughts often wandered back to the assassinations carried out by the ghost. Section 8.3, the hidden legacy. Eleanor received a letter, written in an unfamiliar hand, urging her to come to an old church on the outskirts of London. The message was cryptic but implied that there was unfinished business regarding the Devereux. Could the ghost have had a hidden agenda all along? And was there another figure pulling the strings from behind the shadows? The letter led Eleanor into a deeper conspiracy, one that threatened to shatter everything she had worked so hard to rebuild. Section 8.4, the Ghost's True Master. As Eleanor followed the trail of clues, she uncovered an astonishing revelation. The true mastermind behind the Devereux and the ghost was none other than an influential figure in the British government, a powerful aristocrat who had long manipulated both the Montagues and the Devereux for his own gain. This man had used the Devereux as pawns in a much larger game, orchestrating the conflict to solidify his own power. Chapter 9, the final betrayal. Section 9.1, a well of lies. The deeper Eleanor dug, the more she realized that the betrayals were not over. Sir Edward, who had been defeated, had not acted alone. He had been working with the powerful aristocrat all along. This discovery shocked Eleanor to her core, as it became clear that her own flesh and blood had been a part of the larger conspiracy. She felt the weight of this revelation, as it meant that no one in her family was truly safe. Section 9.2, The Hidden Hand of Power. The aristocrat, a man named Lord Reginald Ashford, had used his influence to control both the Devereuxs and the Montagues. He had wanted to ignite a war between the two families, all while carefully maintaining his position as a behind-the-scenes manipulator. As a powerful figure in the government, Lord Ashford had used his resources to bribe, blackmail, and threaten anyone who might stand in his way. Eleanor knew she had to bring him down, but the task seemed insurmountable. Section 9.3, The Fall of Lord Ashford ***. Eleanor and Turner, now fully recovered, began to plan their final move against Lord Ashford. They knew that exposing him would require not just evidence, but the support of key political figures who were also entangled in his schemes. They spent months gathering information, building alliances, and preparing for a confrontation. Section 9.4, The Battle for the Future. In a dramatic confrontation, Eleanor, Turner, and their allies confronted Lord Ashford in the heart of his political empire. As the truth came to light, Lord Ashford's empire crumbled, his allies turned on him, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions. The Devereuxs, who had been pawns in his game, were granted a chance at redemption, while the Montagues were able to reclaim their legacy. The criminal empire that had threatened to tear London apart was finally dismantled. Chapter 10, The Legacy Restored. Section 10.1, A New Beginning. With Lord Ashford's fall, Eleanor Montague stood victorious. The Montague family had endured betrayal, loss, and years of political intrigue, but they had emerged stronger than ever. Eleanor's leadership had solidified her place as one of the most powerful figures in London, but she knew that the road ahead was still fraught with challenges. The family's name had been restored, and with it, the legacy of her ancestors. Section 10.2, Heir to the Throne. Eleanor, now free from the threat of betrayal, began to think about the future. With no children of her own, she had decided to adopt a young heir, someone who could carry the Montague name forward and continue the work that she had started. The adoption was a symbolic gesture, marking the beginning of a new chapter for the Montague family and signalling their rebirth after a century of turmoil. Section 10.3, The Road Ahead. As Eleanor looked to the future, she knew that she would never forget the sacrifices made along the way. The lives lost, the betrayals endured, and the lessons learned were all part of her journey. But she had forged a legacy built on resilience, loyalty, and justice. She had taken down the criminals who had sought to destroy her family and had ensured that the Montagues would remain a symbol of power and integrity. Section 10.4, A Final Piece. In the final moments of her life, Eleanor Montague stood at the family estate, looking out over the land that had once been threatened by violence and greed. Her family's legacy had been restored, and the criminal empire that had sought to undermine them had been dismantled. With the knowledge that her work had been completed, she felt a sense of peace that had long eluded her. This concludes The Hidden Heir, a historical crime drama that tells the story of family betrayal, power struggles, and redemption. It is a tale of resilience and justice, highlighting how the actions of a few can shape the destiny of a legacy.